Good evening, everyone. We're just going to give it a minute for everyone to join the webinar, and then we will get started. If you're having any issues seeing the screen, I'm just sharing the slides for the presentation, then just let us know in the chat. And we'll just, again, give it a few seconds for everyone to join. All right. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining this webinar. Our topic for tonight is mental health in children and teens. I'm Dr. Stephanie Rubino. I'm a naturopathic doctor registered in Ontario and an educator with Factors Group as well. So thank you for joining us, and thank you to Healthy Planet for hosting this event and this important topic. In addition to being a naturopathic doctor and health educator, I'm also a mom of two boys. So this topic is very, very important to me, and I'm sure important to you. So we will go through some key tips tonight in terms of how we can support our kids and their overall mental health. If you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or I think there's also a Q&A option. So feel free to do that. I won't be looking at those areas until the end of the presentation. So I'll just want to go through the presentation first, and then I'll take a look at any questions that you have. Just keep in mind, I know you may have some personal questions. Unfortunately, I can't answer personal questions directly. I'll do my best and provide some resources too that will help guide you in the right direction. All right, and this session is being recorded, so in case you know someone that wants to view it afterwards, then that will be available to you. Okay, so let's get started. As mentioned, our topic for tonight is mental health in children and teens, the role of nutrition and lifestyle. Let's see if I can get these slides moving. Here we go. So here's our agenda. We'll talk about the youth mental health crisis that we are facing in Canada. We'll go through some alarming statistics, but will give us an appreciation of what is happening and why this is such an important topic. We'll talk about some brain busters, so factors that are having a negative impact on the mental health of our youth. And we'll also talk about the importance of the gut connection. And then we'll end off with some key tips, some strategies, some brain builders, some positive steps that we can take to support the mental health of our kids and teens. And then we'll summarize it all together at the end. Okay, so let's start with some information just in terms of Canada's youth mental health crisis. So let's discuss some numbers. So we definitely know that our youth are facing a mental health crisis. Recent data is revealing some alarming information. So in North America, 1 in 5 kids lives with a mental health disorder, and 1 in 9 children under the age of 17 has been diagnosed with ADHD, and this number is definitely rising. We see that depression and anxiety are among the leading causes of illness and disability among our adolescents, and substance use disorders have increased along with eating disorders. Unfortunately, suicide has become the second leading cause of death for youth aged 10 to 24. The number of young people receiving antidepressants has definitely increased since after the pandemic. And one review found that overall antidepressants can provide some small improvements in children between the ages of 6 to 18. But with that, there seems to be an increased risk of suicide-related outcomes for those on antidepressants. So it's not to say, children or teens that are on antidepressants should completely stop. They can provide some benefit in some situations. We just want to make sure we're supporting our kids appropriately with other strategies as well, some nutrition, lifestyle strategies that we'll talk about in a bit. So let's understand a child's brain, which is definitely different than an adult's brain. So a child's brain versus an adult's brain derives more pleasure from rewarding behaviors. So social rewards, eating junk and sugary foods definitely derives more pleasure for them. In addition, keep in mind that teens are dealing with different body changes and raging hormones that can affect their overall mental health and decision making. And just in general, our youth are more vulnerable. They're more susceptible to biological, psychological, and social factors, which will impact their overall mental health. Okay, so definitely different in terms of what we as adults experience. And keep in mind that even though the human brain stops growing in size by early adolescence, it does continue to develop and mature until our mid to late 20s. So, we have individuals even in university who are still developing and maturing and getting a grasp on, overall mental health and increasing that susceptibility that they might be dealing with. So brains are different, how we interpret things are different, and that's definitely something to keep in mind as we try to understand what's going on with our kids. So here's just a list of different risk factors, why our kids are more vulnerable to mental health concerns. So quality of home life, relationship with peers, I'm sure we can all attest to that. Increased access to social media, definitely playing a role in terms of what our kids are being exposed to. Cyberbullying, worries about climate change, definitely on the rise and affecting how our kids are feeling overall. And this is definitely an important time where, our youth are understanding their overall identity, their place in the world, and who they are. And then we have sort of other factors that will play a role in terms of mental health. So what our youth are eating. Okay, we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. So definitely poor nutrition, the intake of ultra processed foods will impact mental health. Reactions to foods. So if there's any, sensitivities taking place, that can play a role. Our exposures to toxins in our food and environment, stress, hormones, even skin disorders. So how, our youth are feeling on the outside will definitely impact how they're feeling on the inside, and genetics can play a role as well. So lots of factors coming into play. It's not always easy to pinpoint it to one factor. There's definitely a combination of things taking place and to really understand as we approach this topic. And just a few words about social media. I know this, can be a big point when we're dealing with our kids and trying to limit exposure and what they're seeing on social media and what they're dealing with. But an interesting fact that the U.S. Surgeon General recently issued a new advisory on social media stating it's the defining public health crisis of our time. And what's interesting is that, it's just not about the kids. It's also our role as parents and our use of social media and our phones, which are also influencing what's taking place. So a recent study in Canada found that when parents are perceived as being distracted by their phones or other technology during social or family interactions, that can also affect the health of the mental health of our children. So sort of keeping in mind that we also play a role here as parents shaping what's happening with respect to the influence of social media. So there's, been increasing recommendations with respect to labeling social media platforms with health warnings, similar to what we do with tobacco and alcohol, just because of its overall impact, negative impact on mental well-being. Okay, so let's move on to talking about some brain busters. So factors that are definitely going to have an impact on the physiology of our brain function. So starting with ultra processed foods. So I mentioned that poor nutrition and ultra processed foods are one risk factor when it comes to the mental health of our kids. And interestingly, a review that was published in the British Medical Journal, looking at about 10 million people, found that the consumption of ultra processed food. So, you can see from this image, it's like your packaged food, your chips, your hot dogs, your donuts, that kind of stuff, are definitely leading to a number of health concerns, including heart disease, anxiety, and early death. And unfortunately, what's actually quite surprising is that Canadians are getting almost 50% of their caloric intake from ultra processed foods. So this is really huge. Half of what we're eating is, it consists of foods that are unfortunately, devoid of nutrients. They're made from cheap, chemically altered ingredients. They're high in sugar, saturated fats, and contain a number of additives, which, we can all appreciate are not beneficial to the body. So these foods not providing any vitamins, minerals, which we know are critical for overall development during these years where the body is growing and the brain is still developing. And studies have shown a direct relationship between the intake of ultra processed foods, as along with mood changes, anxiety, attention, and learning problems in kids. And according to the Yale Food Addiction Scale, about 14% of adults and 15% of adolescents actually show clinical signs of addictions to these processed foods. So this is similar to rates that we see with respect to alcohol and tobacco among adults. So we definitely want to look at decreasing those ultra processed foods. And sugars definitely plays a key role here as well. We know that simple refined sugars will wreak havoc on our overall blood sugar balance. They will cause our blood sugar levels to rise, increase insulin levels, and increase the production of free fatty acids from the liver, and that will increase inflammation in the body. Inflammation itself can have a negative impact. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And affect overall brain function. But there is research showing that sugar and high sugar intake is linked to mental health concerns like depression, anxiety, learning problems, irritability, and emotional outbursts. So, it's easy to say don't eat sugar, but the reality is that can be often hard for some individuals, depending on what's going on, and especially if they're, used to a high intake. We definitely want to look at minimizing sugar intake, and the recommendation is to get a maximum of about 5 to 10% of our daily calories from sugar. The estimate is about, 6 teaspoons or 26 grams of sugar per day. That's the maximum to allow. But of course, the less, the better. And a lot of people think, fruit juice is healthy. Unfortunately, it's not. So if this is a beverage of choice for your kids, then I encourage you to definitely try to reduce that, replace with water, smoothies, other different options. Fruit juice is high in sugar. It has no role in an overall healthy diet. Another important factor that kind of goes along with this, conversation about ultra processed foods and high sugars is just other um, chemicals, additives that we are being exposed to, both children and adults, and the impact that that's having on our brain. So our exposure to different agriculture and industrial chemicals like pesticides and heavy metals, even exposure to microplastics if we're using plastic food containers, water bottles. These are different neurotoxins and neurodisruptive chemicals that will impact our overall brain health, and have been correlated to a decline in mental health among our youth. So they will play a role in terms of harming overall brain development and mental function. So unfortunately, our younger generations are being exposed more to these different toxins earlier in development. And that's definitely having an impact in terms of their overall mental health. And a few other brain busters. So stress and sleep definitely play a role. Just because they're kids doesn't mean that they're not exposed to high levels of stress, especially teens. They do often report higher levels of stress than adults, as well as higher levels of anxiety and depression than any other age groups. And we know prolonged stress can definitely, trigger concerns in terms of irritability, emotional outbursts, anxiety, etc. And a new study showed that the effects of stress from the pandemic caused adolescent brains to age more rapidly than normal. And this led to a decrease in the functioning of certain areas of the brain, such as the amygdala, which is responsible for the regulation of our different emotions, and an impact on the hippocampus, which is involved in memory and learning. Okay. And then sleep. I know kids are notorious too for, really trying to hold off a good night's sleep sometimes, but definitely we know that not getting the recommended sleep overall can impact, our mental health. So some stats here: about 58% of middle school students and 72% of high school students actually get less than the recommended amount of sleep of 8 to 10 hours per night. Those are really big numbers. And we know that even one night of restricted sleep, so some research has shown that having one night sleep that's restricted to 4 hours can actually increase our cortisol levels, cortisol being one of our main stress hormones. So increasing cortisol by about 37% the next day. And that can lead to an even more pronounced stress response, more fatigue, and decreased mental capacity. So, and even for teens, who want to go to bed late, but their school day definitely starts very early, and so they're having to wake up early. That really can play a havoc on their overall brain health and nervous system function. So, encouraging kids to get as much sleep as they can is definitely important. So let's talk about the important connection between the gut and the brain. So, and this would be another brain buster, having, a gut function that, isn't at its best. So we know that different food sensitivities, ultra-processed foods, high sugars, overuse of antibiotics, and even stress can impact our overall gut health and increase gut permeability. So this means that the lining of the gut is impacted, and the overall gut barrier, the integrity of the overall gut barrier is negatively impacted. So that can lead to what's called a permeable gut lining or leaky gut, where different microbes and toxins can unfortunately go through that gut barrier, go into the bloodstream, and actually increase inflammation around the body. So, inflammation is often called one of our main causes of different concerns, like cardiovascular disease, et cetera. But inflammation can also happen in the brain and lead to neuroinflammation. And this neuroinflammation has also been connected to learning disorders, mood concerns like anxiety and depression. So researchers have found that actually individuals with depression, and this is a study with adults, but individuals with depression actually have higher levels of an inflammatory marker known as C-reactive protein. This is a marker that you can actually get tested through a simple blood test. And those that have depression have about what this one study found, about 46% higher levels of C-reactive protein. So this is just illustrating, that inflammation can take place with concerns related to brain health. And of course, maintaining the integrity of the gut is very important. So signs of leaky gut, can include things like bloating or gas, changes in bowels, so constipation or diarrhea, abdominal discomfort, gut concerns can affect other systems in the body, for example, affecting the skin and causing eczema, leading to allergies, and of course, impacting overall brain health and mood, leading to mood changes and difficulty concentrating. And our immune health as well. About 70% of our immune system is located in the gut. So if you have kids that are getting sick often, this can be tied to their overall gut function. So one thing that we really need to pay attention to is the health of our gut microbiome. This is just a really important term that means the community of our microorganisms that are in our gut, in our digestive tract. And they play many roles in terms of acting to protect the barrier of the gut, helping with nutrient absorption and nutrient production. And the gut microbiome, interestingly, also plays a role in the production of different neurotransmitters. And neurotransmitters are these chemicals that support our mood and other functions in the body. Specifically, the gut microbiome actually produces 90 to 95% of the body's serotonin. So serotonin is that feel-good hormone that helps to regulate our appetite, mood, and sleep. So it can play a role in some of the mood concerns that we experience. And the gut microbiome is also responsible for producing about 50% of the body's dopamine. And this is the neurotransmitter that is involved in mood, motivation, energy, sleep, and learning. So supporting the gut and supporting the microbiome is very important in terms of supporting the connection between the gut and the brain, and supporting not only how our digestive system will work, but also, how our mood and behavior can be supported. Okay, and then this slide, just a few points with respect to the connection between ADHD and the gut. So ADHD does, constitute the most common neurodevelopmental disorder in children and can persist into adulthood. There's various outcomes that can occur with kids that are experiencing ADHD. So, concerns with respect to educational underachievement, employment difficulties, and increase of mental health disorders. Long-term outcomes can definitely be improved when there's early diagnosis taking place along with treatment. But we know that there is a connection between ADHD and other neuropsychiatric disorders, and a connection with, food sensitivities or reactions or exposure to those different toxins, nutrient deficiencies, and an unhealthy microbiome. So just sort of tying that back to many of the points that I've already mentioned in terms of, quality of diet, those neurotoxins that we're being exposed to, and then, of course, the health of our gut microbiome. And interestingly, a 2024 study showed that children with ADHD exhibited lower gut microbiota diversity and lower levels of key, what's called short chain fatty acids. Short chain fatty acids are types of postbiotics, which will work with, microorganisms to, again, support overall gut function. So again, just driving home that point in terms of the importance of supporting overall gut health. Okay, so let's get into the part where, we can look at what we can do to support our kids. And many of these tips are actually ones that we can use ourselves. So, when we get involved in the healing process, then, I think that really helps to support our kids. And there's many benefits that as parents we can experience by, following some of this advice. So, when it comes to diet, definitely eating a whole foods diet is key. The Mediterranean diet definitely receives a lot of attention when it comes to brain health, cardiovascular health, and just good health overall. From this type of diet, we are getting good quality proteins, good fats, high amounts of fiber, a variety of nutrients, antioxidants, etc. So it's definitely a good diet to follow overall to support overall health. But basically here we're looking at sources of cold water fish. So your salmon, mackerel, those kind of fish, okay? Free-range organic eggs and poultry, and then moderate amounts of organic dairy and meat. And then with that, making sure we're getting in enough, fruits and veggies. So really trying to aim for a rainbow of fruits and vegetables, different colors to incorporate to get a variety of those antioxidants that are key for overall health. Olive oil, berries, avocados, nuts and seeds, and different spices as well. Dark chocolate's always great, high in antioxidants and beneficial for brain health. So, oftentimes the challenge with diet and kids is pickiness. So really, this isn't something that you would, especially if you have a picky eater, incorporate, all of it at once. You're slowly introducing some of these food sources to see what they will eat, what they won't eat, and, providing it in different ways. Smoothies, smoothie bowls, incorporating different vegetables into, tomato sauce and that sort of thing. So trying to be creative in terms of the different recipes that you can use to introduce some of these foods. In terms of lifestyle, so, under some cases, you might want to consider meditation and mindfulness exercises, counseling and cognitive behavioral therapy can come into play. So working with, a psychologist or other therapist in this way to help support these areas could be a good idea. Physical exercise, we'll talk about more in a bit, but definitely increasing activity levels is key. With that conversation about social media, just, trying to limit device time. I know this can be challenging, especially when many hours in school are actually spent on some devices to do schoolwork. And then, kids definitely want to come home and use it as a way to spend their free time. playing video games and that sort of thing. So, but just be mindful, depending on your rules at home. If you allow it, maybe limit the time, allow for a number of breaks to sort of break up the time that they might be on devices, and of course incorporate those, physical exercise time to break up the time that they're on electronics. And hydration. So this is a big thing, and I always see with my patients, just in terms of water intake in kids, is always challenging. So we know that 75% of the brain is made up of water. So staying hydrated is very important for our overall focus, learning, attention. By the time we feel thirsty, we're already dehydrated. And that dehydration can lead to inflammation, fatigue, dizziness, poor concentration, reduced cognition. So, and there's a stat here, even mild, levels of dehydration, about 2%, can affect our overall mental performance. So, pack that water bottle for your kids. Make sure they have something available at home all the time. Sometimes it's constant reminders, unfortunately, but it's definitely really an important factor to incorporate. And then this just goes through some water recommendations from the National Academy of Medicine. So for kids, age 1 to 3, the recommendation is 4 cups per day. As age increases, of course, the amount of water to drink increases. 5 cups for the next age group, and then once they're in their teens, ranging from 8 to 11 cups per day. As I mentioned, physical exercise is very important. So children aged 5 to 18 should be getting at least 1 hour of daily exercise, physical exercise. And this is just really important in terms of getting them moving, but plays other key roles in terms of building confidence, social skills, developing coordination, improving concentration and learning, strengthening muscles and bones, improving overall fitness, helping to maintain a healthy weight, improving sleep, and of course, improving mental well-being. So even just 2 hours per week of moderate exercise or 1 hour of vigorous exercise can have benefits. If you're finding that 1 hour per day is challenging, really, just as much activity that can be incorporated is always a benefit. And get active with them. I think that's always the key, is when, as parents, we become involved in the process, then that definitely makes it easier. And then definitely not at the bottom of the list. I know it's we talked about diet and lifestyle before, support from parents and caregivers. I know for many kids, this might be top priority, but definitely our role in terms of supporting our kids is really important. We do play a role in terms of, overseeing many of the meals that are provided to our kids, providing those healthy foods from the Mediterranean diet. Oftentimes we're the ones that are purchasing those foods, making sure the kids are having 3 meals per day, healthy snacks, always making sure they're having a breakfast that incorporates some source of protein in there. That's, as parents, that's sort of our role, and as caregivers. So definitely at the top of the list. We can also play a role in terms of encouraging or scheduling quiet time, or allowing them to have time just to relax, free of, schoolwork and activities. Doing family activities together. And we are also in a position to choose what supplements that our kids will take. And that's going to lead us into our next topic in terms of what nutrients are key when it comes to overall mental health for our youth. Okay, so we're going to go through these nutrients and their importance. So we'll talk about the importance of protein, probiotics and prebiotics, vitamin D, magnesium, omega-3 fatty acids, and we'll talk about L-theanine as an important phytonutrient for overall brain health. So starting with protein, we know this is a really important macronutrient that supports every cell in our body. It's essential for the development of our muscles, bones, hair, and skin. It helps to form our antibodies that support our immune function, hormones. It acts as a fuel source for our cells and tissues and supports our overall brain health. Protein seems to be challenging, I would say, for many people, not just when it comes to, children and teens. I also find that adults have a challenge getting enough protein into their diet. But we do know that low protein diets can cause behavioral concerns, including hyperactivity and learning issues. So when it comes to kids, I just kind of use the rule of thumb of just trying to incorporate protein at every meal. And there is a target protein amount here calculation that you can try to use. So, ranging from 0.5 to 1 gram per pound of body weight per day. So that can help sort of gear how much protein your child might need. There's some examples here in terms of, some considerations for protein sources and how you can provide them to your kids. So, small containers of Greek yogurt will be high in protein, different nuts and seeds, as long as there's no allergies taking place. Protein smoothies, I always find sort of at the top of the list. It's a way that your child can become involved in terms of creating a smoothie that they will like. And if they don't like the texture of a smoothie, then that smoothie can be frozen into popsicles, and that might increase, their intake of taking in, an additional protein source. So different options, and I encourage you, just as I mentioned before, just trying to look for different recipes that they might enjoy and getting them involved in the kitchen, in the preparation process and in the cooking process definitely increases their interest and their desire to try different foods. So protein is key. In addition, using prebiotics and probiotics for gut support. So this just ties back to our little chat about the importance of the gut microbiome. Remember, it plays a role in terms of supporting the production of different neurotransmitters like our serotonin and dopamine. Also plays a role in terms of supporting overall gut function. So prebiotics, key. Prebiotics are types of fiber that are found in plants. We can also find prebiotics in different supplements. So prebiotics act as sort of the food source for our good bacteria or our probiotics. And they play a role in terms of supporting the overall gut integrity. So your things like apples, bananas, berries, these are good food sources of prebiotics. And then using probiotics and probiotic foods. So our probiotics are the ones that are going to be providing those live bacteria, beneficial bacteria that will support the microbiome. Can work, with the prebiotics to support overall gut function. Probiotic foods can include things like kimchi, sauerkraut, kombucha, yogurt. You can also find probiotic supplements that will have beneficial strains of bacteria that will support the gut. There are a number of probiotic supplements. We can't go through all of them, so I just sort of featuring one here tonight. Of course, when it comes to supplements in kids, they definitely have to be in a form that is simply kid friendly. So if it's a powder or chewable or a gummy, it needs to taste good for them to take it. Powders definitely could be mixed into, smoothies or yogurt or applesauce. those sort of things. So just making sure that you're trying to choose something that your kids will definitely take is key. So here we just have a probiotic gummy from the Preferred Nutrition line. So again, this is just one example of a probiotic supplement. And again, probiotics will help to support overall gut health and that gut microbiome that's key for overall gut support. Vitamin D, and especially this time of year when we're going to be unfortunately heading into our fall winter season, vitamin D production tends to decline. And we know vitamin D is not only important for our bones and teeth and overall growth and development, but is connected to overall immune function and brain function. So here, but you can see vitamin D deficiency has been associated with cognitive impairment and depression, acne severity, neurodivergence, especially if women are deficient while they're pregnant. And vitamin D also supports our neurotransmitters. So we talked about dopamine and serotonin before, but it also supports our GABA levels. And GABA is one of our inhibitory neurotransmitters, which means that it has a sort of a calming effect on our nervous system. So vitamin D is definitely important in terms of supporting those neurotransmitters in order to support overall brain health. Unfortunately, it's been estimated that about 50% of Canadian children have vitamin D levels below the recommended amount. And, if kids are indoors a lot more, if they're on their screens, spending less time outside, then of course their risk of vitamin D deficiency is higher. So get those kids outside, get them off the screen. That's definitely one of your first ways to increase vitamin D levels. And then you can look at supplemental forms. So, again, whether it's through a gummy, vitamin D on its own, a liquid, chewable tablets, different forms are available. You can also find vitamin D in different multivitamins as an option as well. Depending on the age group, that will sort of determine how much vitamin D someone needs. But when it comes to kids, usually the recommendation is around 1,000 IUs or more per day. One of my favorite nutrients for both children and adults is magnesium. So we definitely know that a number of Canadians are facing a magnesium deficiency. This is due to, our food sources not having enough. Chronic stress levels can lead to magnesium deficiency. Different medications can also cause magnesium depletion. Magnesium is such an important mineral when it comes to our bodies. It supports over 300 enzymes. It's involved in metabolism, supporting our bones and teeth, plays a role in improving sleep, relieving anxiety, and even supporting our mitochondria. If you're not familiar with our mitochondria, but those are the parts in our cells that increase our ATP or energy molecules. So really key in terms of supporting our energy powerhouses. But magnesium also supports GABA. Okay, so I talked about GABA with vitamin D. So magnesium will promote GABA activity, having again that calming effect, and is also a cofactor, plays a role in the production of our serotonin. So it all comes together, and hopefully it all starts to make sense in terms of why we're considering these nutrients. This last point, stress and oral contraceptives are two things that can reduce magnesium levels, and this is key, especially for teenage girls who may be using contraceptives, kids overall who are under a lot of stress. These factors can reduce magnesium levels. So just sort of keeping that in mind if you are considering that magnesium should be supported. Magnesium we can find in different nuts and seeds, whole grains, green leafy vegetables. So that's a key way to get magnesium, and then supplement forms are also important. We know that magnesium deficiency is linked to ADHD, anxiety, and depression, and it has been found to support overall mental health. Again, depression, anxiety, insomnia, memory loss, irritability, and headaches. The amount of magnesium that we need really depends on how old we are, what our diet is like, if we are on any medications. And there might be questions in terms of what type of magnesium to take, because there are different forms of magnesium. You've probably heard of a magnesium citrate, magnesium bisglycinate. There's also magnesium L-threonate. So magnesium itself is often bound to just another compound to improve its absorption. And the impact on the body just depends on what it's bound to. So citrate will have a role in terms of supporting magnesium levels. Citrate might cause some digestive upset for some individuals. So in that case, magnesium bisglycinate is an alternative form that doesn't have an impact on our digestive health, does not cause digestive upset, and is a highly absorbed form of magnesium. Magnesium L-threonate also will play a role in terms of supporting our muscles and, calming the nervous system, that sort of thing. But it is the only type of magnesium that can cross the blood-brain barrier, and has been shown to support cognition, focus, memory. So this could be another type of magnesium, okay? So some magnesium supplements you'll find in powder form, some in capsules. Capsules, as long as your kids can swallow, can be an option. Sometimes you can open capsules and mix in a liquid as an option, or there's also chewable forms of magnesium that are available. So just, reach out to your healthcare provider to find out, what forms would be suitable for your kids. Okay, a few more nutrients to go through. So our omega-3 fatty acids. So our omega-3s are considered healthy, good fats. They play a key role in terms of supporting brain and eye development, supporting the nervous system, reducing inflammation, and supporting other areas of the body. 60% of our brain is actually made up of fat. So the different omega-3 fatty acids that you'll hear about are EPA and DHA. DHA makes up about 40% of the brain's fat. EPA is important for memory and cognition. We are, consuming different fats in our diet. Oftentimes we can be consuming a lot of seed oils and vegetable oils, which tend to be higher in omega-6. We just want to balance those omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. So the recommendation is sort of a 1-to-4 ratio of omega-3 to omega-6. So oftentimes we're getting enough omega-6 from our diet. So usually the recommendation is to increase our intake of omega-3s, whether that's through consuming cold water fish. So, those sardines, mackerels. I know a lot of kids don't eat those types of fish, but if they do, that's great. And then different plant sources. So chia seeds, flax seeds, walnuts are also considerations. But I know for my own kids, we definitely use an omega-3 supplement. It's an easier way to get omega-3 fatty acids into them. And omega-3 fatty acids definitely come a long way. You can find a lot of great tasting liquids available that you can have your kids take directly or incorporate into different smoothies. A lot of them do not have a fishy taste, so they're good to incorporate in different ways. So one example here is the Sealicious Kids omega-3, providing just over 1,200 milligrams of EPA and DHA along with vitamin D. And again, when we take those omegas, we are looking at, supporting the brain, supporting mood balance. And when it comes to omegas, just a tip to make sure that you're choosing ones that have been tested. There can be a lot of contaminants in our fish sources, so you want to use a product and a brand that is testing for those contaminants and is providing a clean fish oil. So again, speaking to your healthcare provider to see what fish oil would be best for your family. And the last nutrient we'll talk about are the phytonutrients, and we'll specifically focus on L-theanine, but phytonutrients are nutrients that we get from plants. There are different ones that have been shown to support mental health in kids. L-theanine, which is an amino acid, we'll talk about this one in more detail, that comes from green tea. Saffron is actually supported to support mental health and mood in teens. So there's some good research with saffron, chamomile, phosphatidylserine, lots of great examples when it comes to phytonutrients and their role in supporting brain health. But L-theanine specifically, I do use a lot with kids. It's a gentle way to help, support relaxation and, reduce irritability. So L-theanine is an amino acid that primarily comes from green tea leaves. It's been shown to promote relaxation. It actually increases our alpha brain waves. So these are the brain waves that promote a relaxed state, but still allow us to stay alert. L-theanine also plays a role in supporting those neurotransmitters that I've talked about a bit tonight, GABA, dopamine, and serotonin. And it really plays a role in terms of reducing sort of mind wandering, improving focus. There's some research using L-theanine in ADHD. And its improvement with respect to focus and learning. So great option. L-theanine you can find in capsule form or chewable forms as well. So just to summarize everything, some tactics for success. So we have a couple of categories here to look at. So really ensuring that we are providing 9 things. So hydration, we talked about, physical activity, making sure kids are getting enough protein, the minimum of 4 servings of fruits and vegetables per day, but the more definitely the better. 1 serving of omega-3s daily, 1 serving of fermented foods. So those are those foods that will be high in probiotics. Getting some outside time, at least 10 minutes per day, stress reduction techniques if needed, and parental support, always key. If you feel like nutrients are required for your child, then some considerations, again, that you can talk to your healthcare provider about. So magnesium, omega-3 fatty acids, probiotics, vitamin D, and L-theanine. I'm sure there are others that we could talk about, but those are the ones that we focused on tonight. And then things to avoid. So definitely trying to avoid screens as much as possible, especially under the age of 4. And again, I know this is a challenge, but limiting time to 1 hour daily for those that are over 4. Avoiding ultra-processed foods. So, we want to just eat whole, real foods to nourish our bodies, and then minimizing the amount of sugar that we're taking in. Okay. And then when it comes to supplements, just ensuring that the supplement that you are taking is tested for different contaminants. So if you ever see this iSura seal on any of the products that you're purchasing, that just means that the product has been tested for over 800 contaminants, tested for GMOs, solvents, pesticides, heavy metals, etc. So iSura certified products are contaminant-free, free of GMOs, authenticated. They don't have any adulterants in them, and they're accurately labeled. So this is a great certification just to ensure that the products that you're using are pure and clean. So I just wanted to draw your attention to this book by Dr. Karen Jensen. Dr. Karen Jensen is a naturopathic doctor. She's retired now, but she has, I think, published about 7 or 8 books. This is her most recent book. A lot of the information that we discussed tonight is actually based from her book and some of the great advice that she provides. So if you can get your hands on this book, I do believe it's available online for purchase, then this is a really great resource if you're looking for some more information and other ways to support your kids. So she definitely feels that, you know, our kids need support during this time. And of course, you know, nutrition, lifestyle, and nutrients can play a key role in terms of helping to turn things around. Okay, so that concludes this session on supporting mental health in our children and teens. I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. And if you do have any questions, feel free to contact the number that's there. Okay, I'm gonna head over to the chat. Let's see. I can see. Here we go. Okay, hopefully we sorted out any noise problems. There is a recording that will be available. Okay, looks like there was just some technical problems. And recording will be available. So there's just a question just in terms of a blood test to see if someone has a problem. So I'm not sure specifically what you're referring to, Janice. When it comes to evaluations, you know, of our kids, it would be a number of factors. You could do some nutrient testing, looking at their vitamin D levels, iron levels, those sorts of things. Just general blood markers, physical examination. And then just talking to your kids about what's happening. So, and if you need to get a psychologist or other mental health professional involved, then that's a consideration. So is there a specific type of nutrient that is better or more nutritious? So that's hard to just pick one. I think it just really depends on the kid and what is taking place. So sometimes I find just starting with diet, looking at overall what a child is eating, maybe they just need a little bit more protein and water. We can see how that does, and then build up from there.
Question was actually, what type of nut might you recommend?
Oh, nut. Oh, sorry, I read that wrong. Thank you. Type of nut that is better or more nutritious. So walnuts are great. So what I love about walnuts, if you look at them, they're actually in the shape of a brain. So those are really great nuts to consider for brain health. Thanks, Carla. What can you do if you find out that you are now allergic to gluten? So now you have to avoid gluten. So just take some time to educate yourself about grains that contain gluten, ones that are gluten-free. And, you know, really gluten-free diets, you know, a lot of people just kind of tend to start eating gluten-free packaged products. That's not always the best approach. So, you know, researching which grains are gluten-free. So quinoa, rice, those types of grains are important. And then really, you know, eating a lot of good quality proteins, fresh fruits and vegetables. And if you need to, then working with a nutritionist to help you on that road. Just a question in terms of ADHD diagnosis. That's great. Sometimes that just sort of happens when kids are in school and we're looking at how their focus is and how well they're adapting to the process. So I would say, you know, elementary school would kind of be in that time where we're kind of looking at that. And is eczema a sign of a bigger problem, and what can be done about eczema? So skin conditions are generally a reflection of what's taking place in the gut. So definitely looking at gut support. So that would kind of be one of your core issues taking place. And then what can be done about eczema. So, you know, there's, you know, different strategies there in terms of gut support, immune support, and then, you know, topicals to support an overall eczema condition. So if you're, you know, you can reach out to me on Instagram if, you know, you want a referral for a naturopathic doctor to help you on that process. Can you name any multivitamin in powder form for 12 years? So unfortunately, that's a specific personal question. So I won't be able to answer that. And what's your opinion on tyrosine for kids? I can't say that I've used tyrosine a lot for kids. I do tend to use more of the nutrients, phytonutrients first. Okay, sorry, some of the questions are a little bit on repeated, so. Okay, and then just in terms of there's just a question here in terms of you know, supporting teenagers to eat properly, and if there is any bullying in school. I would definitely just work with a healthcare provider. You know, whether that's a combination of naturopathic doctor, nutritionist, mental health care support practitioner as well. Just a question in terms of vitamin D and K2. Yeah, so those are great nutrients to use together to make sure that calcium is absorbed appropriately. Yes, best way to store nuts is in the freezer or fridge. Okay, and then questions about type 1 diabetes, again, individually case, so that's a little bit more challenging to answer. Okay, and in the case of gut support, again, just individually based, so I would just suggest working with a naturopathic doctor or other healthcare provider. Okay, and my Instagram page is Dr. Stephanie_ND. You can feel free to reach out to me there. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time this evening. Again, the recording will be available. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Healthy Planet, your healthcare providers, or any other trusted individual that you have on this health journey. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.